It's the third planet from the sun. A tiny blue sphere spinning for a moment in time. A remarkable place that was kind enough to yield just the right elements to sustain a phenomenon called life. Where each creature is as unique as this world we call home. And a day begins in much the same way for all. Maybe that's when it crosses your mind. In the warmth from a ray of sun, or the kindness of a stranger, it occurs to you how one life touches so many others. And you begin to see how all things are connected, like the blood that unites one family. And you come to realize that mankind did not weave the web of life. We're merely a strand in it. And whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves.
This is Pleasant Bay down on Chatham. And what happened is in 2007, we had a storm. The water washed over the barrier beach. It was a terrific storm. Day after day, the outgoing tide scoured the inlet open. By that coming summer, it was close to 20 feet deep. That inlet migrated north about a half a mile. And as it did, sort of storm after storm, you washed away another house. The interesting thing about Plum Island has been totally developed. 2004, they put in sewer lines and water mains under the dunes, essentially, so that now you have about 750 homes out there that used to be rough little camps. Now they're permanent year-round homes. Those were the homes that were toppling over the bank last winter. What happened on Plum Island is there were a couple minor storms, and so people started getting prepared, and then they knew that Sandy was going to potentially be a big storm. A lot of the homeowners got permission to do beach scraping. They scraped the beach at low tide, and then they pushed that sand right up underneath the homes. All that sand, 40 feet of sand dunes, were washed away in 2 high tides. On Plum Island, they're losing about 13 feet a year. That was the official estimate by the Army Corps of Engineers. The entire Massachusetts coast retreated about 20 feet last year because there was that much erosion from all over the entire coast of Massachusetts.
We need to put our focus and creative thinking into expediting energy conservation measures and renewable development rather than supporting another fossil fuel facility. As a Salem resident, I am frightened at the thought of paying higher taxes, but much more frightened at a future severely impacted by climate changes.
We don't have any choice about the air we breathe. It's not like saying, oh, I won't have another piece of cheesecake, thank you very much. This is the air we breathe. It's not optional.
This is Belly Elementary School in Salem. They want to build a product across the street that burns gas.
I don't think that's a good idea. Gas is dangerous. It can explode and hurt lots of people.
And when they burn gas, it puts more carbon into our atmosphere, which makes the climate change in really bad ways. Yes, like huge storms and melting glaciers. That's not good for our planet. We think we're going to build something nicer here that is good for the children of Salem and for the children all around the world.
Just walking around and talking to people in our neighborhood, there's a lot of people that didn't even know that there's a new gas power plant going in. The mural is basically in protest to what's going on as far as the whole process. I did it out of frustration, and I did it out of frustration to let everybody know what's going on. So there's 3 garage doors. The first garage door basically tells what the toxins are coming out of the stack of that exhaust system. Everything from the particulate matters to the carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide, we're actually going to be emitting close to 2.5 million tons per year. And then the particulate matter, you get 2.5, 5, and 10. That's basically the different sizes of the particulate matter that are going to be going into our atmosphere in our neighborhoods. That particulate matter actually is the heavier stuff that's actually going to fall closer to us in the neighborhood than being dispersed out further away. And then the middle door is basically telling people, the residents, anybody that happens to see the door, that power plants don't need to be built in a densely populated neighborhood. The infrastructure is set up so that you can build a power plant anywhere and tie into the grid. It doesn't have to be on the oceanfront property in Salem in a densely populated neighborhood. The third door is basically presenting what can be done on a positive note with that piece of property in Salem.
A new coalition has formed called GASPP, Grassroots Against another Salem Power Plant. Next spring, the coal-fired plant on 63 acres of Salem Harbor is scheduled to close. A 690 megawatt gas plant put in its stead. Those of us who care about human health and safety and our environment and the future of our planet would prefer that that did not happen.
The medical community has said, you know, there's really no safe level for exposure for fine particulate matter. We're talking about 109 tons per year for 40 or 50 years. Just to give you an idea of some of the health effects, this new gas plant is, which is proposed for 692 megawatts, which is a good size power plant. It's going to run as a baseload plant, not as something that goes on and off, but a full-time baseload plant. The proponents of this plant are saying, yes, we're going to produce 109 tons of particulate matter. This is fine particulate matter. And just to give you an idea of why we in the area should be concerned about that, is fine particulate matter. It typically affects an entire area, roughly 30 miles or so around the source. Particulate pollution, especially fine particles, contains microscopic solids or liquid droplets that are so small they can get deep into the lungs and cause serious health problems. Numerous scientific studies have linked particulate pollution exposure to a variety of problems, including premature death in people with heart or lung disease, non-fatal heart attacks, irregular heartbeat, aggravated asthma, decreased lung function, and increased respiratory symptoms. People with heart or lung diseases, children, and older adults are the most likely to be affected by particulate pollution. However, even if you are healthy, you may experience temporary symptoms from exposure to elevated levels of particulate pollution. 1 in 3 people are affected by particulate.
Being in the industry, I have specific questions as far as what they're using for emissions controls and what the emissions are coming out of the stack. Some of the things that concern me are the turbines themselves. The turbines, when they start up slowly. They start slow and they create this thing called a low buoyancy plume. It's just because the exhaust coming out of the stack doesn't have a velocity that you would normally see at full load. This low buoyancy plume is what actually is untreated exhaust. And that is what's going to be going around our neighborhoods. This will happen for about 2 hours up until they get the thing up and running up to speed, and the HRSGs actually heat up and they can start injecting ammonia into the catalyst to produce power.
I'm a 20-year resident of historic Derby Street neighborhood in Salem. I am also an abutter to the power plant and a founding member of the opposition group GASPP, and I do not want another power plant. Myself and another neighbor as abutters currently have appeals pending in Massachusetts Land Court. I am upset that Footprint Power are attempting to deny us our right to legal appeals and permitting. They say it's for public safety, but our hope is the court and the siting board will recognize that a project of this magnitude requires additional scrutiny.
The stack height on the current exhaust system for this new power plant is only going to be 230 feet. Initially it was 250 feet. They were able to have meetings early on with the siting board in the city and footprint power, and they basically struck a deal to lower it by 20 feet to save money. There are graphs that actually show that the amount of emissions do increase for every foot that you drop that stack.
One of my favorite subjects was just conserving energy. I moved into a nice old house and I've learned a lot of things about how much energy I waste. And I've been looking into adding insulation. I've already done what I can to replace all the light bulbs and put in more efficient fluorescent and LED light bulbs. And I think I've probably already reduced my energy bill by 5 to 10% on the steps I've already taken. I've gone around and investigated installing interior storms, which look like a very cost-effective way of reducing the amount of energy that I lose as a result of my wonderful but not terribly efficient old single-pane windows.
We underestimate the power of just plain conservation.
If you multiply these in millions of times across New England, it wouldn't surprise me to see that we could actually not only reduce but reverse the amount of energy that we have to consume in order to heat our homes, light them, power our computers. The amazing technological innovations are leading to much more efficient ways of producing heat, producing light, even computing.
I was the lead negotiator with getting the regulations changed on the old coal plant. I'm on 2 committees now with the DEP. This whole approach to natural gas is very dynamic and changing rapidly, and it started changing about 2007 or 8 as fracking really took off and gas got very, very cheap. Those of us who really look at sort of the life cycle of coal or gas, you have to start getting it out of the ground. There's a cost to that. There's a human cost, there's an environmental cost. When you look at fracking, which is the source of the gas nowadays, polluting people's water supply. I've seen pictures of fracking that make me think it looks like mountaintop removal from coal. It can be devastating, and it's going to take years, in my opinion, for the regulatory environment to catch up with the science and the economics. So people are even talking about exporting natural gas from the U.S. If we are consuming fracked gas, our fingerprints are all over it because we are creating the demand for it.
They're going to be using what's called aqueous ammonia. It's 19% aqueous ammonia. Aqueous ammonia has dangers to it. There's a reason why they deliver it in a double-walled tanker when they deliver it through the city. And there's a reason why they deliver it in the middle of the night, so as not to cause an accident with another vehicle. There's a reason why they use vapor lock hoses to unload it and load it, because it's dangerous. There's going to be a process safety management system to take care of this ammonia when it's on site, stored in a double-walled tank. Everything's double-walled to ensure safety, because if it does get out in the vapor form, it can be very dangerous.
Our regulators have already warned us, and I quote, "The biggest challenge we face is our increasing reliance on natural gas as a fuel source for our power plants and the potential for reduced operational performance during stressed system conditions." Unfortunately, New England tends to be at the very end of the natural gas pipelines. It pays a very high price for its natural gas generated electricity.
What they're proposing to do is bring in a 16-inch line and hook it into the main trunk. It's Spectra Energy that's going to be running this gas line. Currently, the plans call for it to go across basically Ward 2 into Collins Cove, back onto Ward 1 area, and cut through Sotelo Lane, which is next to elderly housing, and it's actually going to go through Beatty Park and then into the property. It's going to be underground approximately 4 feet. It's going to be a 16-inch gas line, which is big, and it's going to be running at about 1,440 psi. A typical house only runs about 8 ounces, so you're talking a drastic increase in pressure. This is what's concerning me and everybody that lives in the area. There have been numerous occasions where there's been explosion, so there's no exception to Salem that this could actually happen. And this is what's got everybody concerned, is that, accidents happen. And there's nobody in the city of Salem that can assure that it's not going to happen. In 2010, there was a power plant in Middletown, Connecticut, and it basically exploded during one of the startup processes. It killed numerous people and injured numerous people. We just don't want to see something like that happen here in Salem, especially in a close-knit, dense, populated area.
We're very dependent on the taxes paid by our existing power plant. At the moment, it's a fairly small amount by footprint, but we're also receiving a large payment, approximately $3.5 to $4 million a year for the transition period.
I think there's a misconception in the neighborhood, in the city, that this is going to be a great job revenue for the city, having this power plant in here. Initially, that power plant, up until recently, had about 140, 150 people working there. The new plant's only going to have less than 30 people.
The Global Warming Solutions Act requires Massachusetts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions at least 25% below 1990 levels by 2020 and at least 80% below 1990 levels by 2050.
The Global Warming Solutions Act really enabled Massachusetts to lead the country on real climate action. This bill set out emissions reductions targets of 25% reductions by 2020 and 80% reductions by 2050. The short, narrow window of time that we really need to enact the mandate of that bill.
But the footprint gas-fired power plant is not consistent with that vision and that trajectory. This plant would lock in a whole new, many decades-long era of carbon-intensive generation and associated air pollution impacts. And what's more, it would continue the long, sad legacy of disproportionately burdening the same population with disproportionate health impacts, disproportionate burden of air pollution. Is that Massachusetts has a constitutional right, Article 97, to clean air. And Massachusetts also has a relatively strong air permitting regime. Under the Massachusetts regulations, the department has an obligation to protect against conditions of air pollution. The correct baseline takes into account the fact that the existing Salem Harbor Station facility is already legally required to retire. This facility that's proposed is not going to reduce these impacts. It is a new source of environmental impacts and has to be considered in that light.
We don't have time to wait for the politically feasible solutions. Right now, the timescale that we're looking at has been getting narrower and narrower as more and more scientists come in. The World Bank, which is conservative international body, came out and said, if we continue business as usual, we will hit 4 degrees Celsius global average temperature shift within my lifetime. The World Bank released a report recently called Turn the Heat Down, Why We Need to Avoid a 4 degrees increase in carbon. That study outlines the implications of what will happen if we continue as business as usual. The time frame that we have to be thinking about, I will be 59. When I'm 59, I hope to be like my parents. I hope to be thinking about retirement. I hope to be thinking about my children and how to take care of them. But I don't think I'm going to have that luxury. I don't even know if I'm going to have kids, because if I don't know by the time that I'm 59 that I can't put food on their table because the agricultural basin of the Midwest is in drought and the South is on fire, I won't even know where to live because of rising tides. Those are going to be my concerns. Not what stack height is, not what tax revenue is. I'm just going to be trying to put food on my table. And maybe that's a hard thing to anticipate, 40 years down the line.
I think we could have something better without the danger to our health and safety on 62 acres of waterfront property in historic Salem.
We all share this harbor, and we all consider it to be the most beautiful harbor in the world. This is our precious harbor resource. Millions of people come to Salem. Its rich architecture, its culture, its history all came from what? The connection of Salem to the sea. And in Salem, as it happened in many other communities, we industrialized our waterfront, not for marine industrial uses, but for other uses that prevented the community from having its connection to the sea. Because coal was put there, we said, as a community, we said, well, okay, why don't we put a coal plant there since the coal is being delivered there, and we'll take up these 60 acres of this premier harborfront connection, and we'll turn it over to a place where we generate electricity.
There was a fairly extensive study done that did examine other alternatives, and it seems that the power plant is definitely not the only one. A broader public discussion or debate on this issue, and maybe some creative thinking and financing from both the state and federal sources might help Salem make a smoother transition.
The Jacob study that the state funded and the city worked with went through all the possible uses. How we use that site will very much determine, it's a statement about how we think about ourselves and our community. Wouldn't it be nice to imagine a use that brings us together, makes us feel good and proud of who and what we are, that actually physically brings us together and emotionally and culturally brings us together as it connects us to the sea?
We hope you'll help us stop the power plant project.
Thank you for watching this video.
GASPP just recently found out that we will receive a small grant from the New England Grassroots Environmental Fund of Vermont. All contributions will be tax deductible, and we hope that we can count on you for your support. Thank you.